One day I was at the house of one of my pastors, and he was showing me a rubric, a format of how he gives messages. And I was looking through it and I was reading it. I was like, wow, this is interesting. Little did I know that after that day I left his house, that he was preparing me to speak not too long afterwards. Again, I was being pushed and pushed. The two pastors at the church that I love the most pushing me to want to speak, to want to do this. But I had no plans to do it. I had no plans to speak at a church. I had no plans to give a message. So even in that same day as we were talking about it, I didn't think that he meant sooner rather than later. It was kind of like my experience with my friend Aaron from the church and giving announcements or praying in front of the church or being more involved. I thought it was going to be later. So I remember one day I was on Facebook and I see a message and I click it. And it was from the pastor, and he was telling me how I was set to speak 3 weeks from that day. And I remember this anxiety just overwhelmed me. I was so overwhelmed with emotions. You go from thinking that something's going to happen later to, no, it's going to happen sooner than you think. And now that I look back, I think that was God's way of pushing me. Using people to push me, use circumstances to push me. Because I think he knew that if he left it all on my own, that I would never take those actions, that I would never take those steps. So as I prepared for that message, I had so many doubts, as you can imagine. A lot of, am I worthy enough? A lot of, do I have what it takes? And although I had some experience speaking at the church, it was nothing like a message. To me, a message was something that people waited their whole week to hear. And it would fall on me that I would have to give a message from God to the people to inspire them, to get them to take action, to bring them closer to God. And it weighed heavily on me. But I did give that message. And according to the people, I did do a really good job. But that was just the beginning of the journey. There were so many roadblocks. It took a long time to get to where I am now, where I believe in myself a lot more, where I know my purpose, where I know the plans that God has for me, even though I know there's so many more that I don't know. But I realized that day at the church when I decided to go up to my friend Aaron and tell him that I wanted his job, I realized that that's an action, that's a step that most people will never take in their entire lives. I realized that most people have that same feeling that I had that day. And sometimes I question and I wonder why I was able to use those feelings and emotions and that calling to take action and other people don't. But then I realized it's not up for me to question, it's really up for me to help people decipher that for themselves. It's really to just talk about my story and give my examples to let people know that I feel those same emotions, that I have those same struggles, I have those same doubts, and that you can still take action. As I was speaking more in the church, as I was getting more involved, becoming one of the more known speakers, I felt this push and this urge to do something different. I realized that I wanted to get more messages out to people that were not just in the church, but people outside of the church, people outside who are struggling with anxiety and fear and depression. I didn't want to forget about those people. So I was praying about it, and I was meditating on it, and I was thinking about it. And I realized that I wanted to make a YouTube channel. I had no clue how I was going to get it started. I had no idea how it was going to go about. I didn't know who was going to watch me. To be honest with you, I was fearful that people would make fun of me or say, who is this guy? Who does he think he is? But yet again, I went back to why don't certain people take action? And I realized it's fear. And I realized that I had to get on that other side of fear because I've done it before through experience. So it was the end of December, and we had a New Year's party at the church. It was all the young adults. And I was given a activity. Basically, I was asked by one of the other pastors in training to come up with something to get people entertained, to make them enjoy the New Year's experience. So with my girlfriend, I decided to do a little activity called 3 Goals and Why. So I went up there on stage and I said my 3 goals, and I said why I wanted to do it. So I said I wanted to make a YouTube channel. I clearly told everybody in those seats. And that's another thing about myself. When I tell somebody that I'm going to do something, more than likely I will do it because I said it. So eventually I did make that YouTube channel. As you guys know, I did put out that first episode. And it had its ups and downs. Definitely hasn't been easy. But for me, every single action, every single step that I've taken in my life, it's been with a motive to inspire people. It's been with a motive to know that I do have a purpose here on this earth. And as people are learning more and more about me, as my videos are starting to have more traction, I want people to know that I'm doing this because I know what it's like to be that person who has nobody to really turn to. And although I had many people to turn to, I just didn't believe in myself. I had so many doubts with believing in myself. So with this podcast, that's where I am now. With this podcast, I'm hoping to do the same thing, to inspire people, to push people, to get out content a different way. And I really just want to hone in on, you're going to have a lot of doubts. You're going to have a lot of struggles. But every single day that you wake up in the morning, that's another opportunity to get better. Every single day you wake up in the morning, you have a gift that you can pursue. You have talents that you can use. And I know from my own experience, it definitely hasn't been easy. But I realize that it's taken time. And time is your best friend. Because through time, you learn more about yourself. Through time, you gain that experience that you need to realize that I've been through things in my life before, and I've gotten through them, and I'll get through them again. So as I mentioned with speaking, whether it was speaking in front of a church or making YouTube videos, I had to deal with a lot of, what if people make fun of me? What if people don't like me? What if it doesn't come out the way that I want it to? I had all these doubts, all these fears. But like I said, I always had in the back of my mind, maybe even in the front of my mind, of the vision that I wanted to put out for the world. The vision that I felt that God had for me. That was my motivation. That's always been my motivation. So I really want you guys to understand that there's mental roadblocks you have in your life right now that are holding you back. Something that a teacher said to you when you were in 5th grade is still holding you back. The way your parents raised you is still holding you back. Whether it was verbal abuse, physical abuse, whether it was being bullied. And as I mentioned in the previous episode, therapy helped me a lot. Educating myself, reading books made me realize that this is why I'm so insecure. This is why I care so much about what people think. And the more you process through that, the more you talk about it with people, the more you journal on it, you start understanding a lot about yourself. You start understanding that you don't have to live that way. You don't have to live in bondage. You can actually be free. And that's what I really want you guys to understand. Is that no matter how tight you feel inside, no matter how insecure you may feel, there's freedom on the other side of those worries and anxieties. There's freedom in having a vision and pursuing your purpose. Take care, guys. God bless.